Second Sphinx beneath Giza. New scans suggest hidden underground megastructure. A bold new theory is reigniting global fascination with ancient Egypt. Researchers now claim there may be a second Sphinx buried beneath the sands of the Giza Plateau, potentially forming part of a vast underground complex. Now it's time to go in detail and uncover the full story in today's AI podcast.
One of the most famous, universally recognized monuments in all of human history. You know the one?
Oh, definitely. The Great Sphinx of Giza.
Right, exactly. The Great Sphinx. You've probably seen, I don't know, 1,000 pictures of it. Maybe you've even been lucky enough to stand right in front of it on the Giza Plateau, feeling that desert wind and, taking a photo yourself.
Yeah, and when you look at it, it feels complete, right? Like a finished, static, solitary piece of history.
Exactly. But what if you're only looking at half the picture? What if this incredibly iconic monument, which has been studied for literally centuries, is actually missing its other half?
It's really the ultimate historical blind spot. I mean, we're so conditioned by the images we see, so used to just accepting the landscape exactly as it's presented to us today.
We just take it for granted.
Right. We completely forget to ask if something fundamental is actually missing. And in this deep dive, we are looking at exactly that kind of collision.
Yeah, it's a perfect, albeit somewhat messy, intersection between ancient Egyptian mythology and, well, the absolute cutting edge of modern technology.
We're taking the data from a pretty groundbreaking 2025 expedition and seeing how these new discoveries they're just aggressively challenging decades of incredibly firm archaeological assumptions.
And our mission today, as we go through this massive stack of notes and, satellite scans and historical sources, is to explore a truly wild but completely scientifically backed theory.
A theory that really flips everything on its head.
Yeah, it does. Because the data suggests that the Great Sphinx of Giza has a twin, like a second Sphinx buried deep beneath the Egyptian sand.
And not only is it sitting there, but the data indicates it's accompanied by this massive subterranean underground megastructure.
Which is just, wow.
I know. It sounds like the plot of a blockbuster adventure movie.
Indiana Jones stuff, right?
Exactly. But what we need to do today is keep you, the listener, firmly grounded in the mechanics of the facts. Because the evidence driving this isn't just, wild internet speculation.
Right.
It is a rigorous combination of physical ancient texts and highly, highly sophisticated modern ground-penetrating radar.
But, interpreting a 3,000-year-old carving as a literal map, that presents a massive problem. Because you can't just blind dig the entire Giza Plateau on a hunch.
No, the authorities definitely won't let you do that.
Yeah, they frown upon that. So to really understand why modern, serious scientists with incredibly expensive equipment are out there looking for a second Sphinx right now, we actually have to travel back a bit.
Way back.
Okay.
To 1401 BC.
Right. We have to look at a clue that has been sitting out in plain sight for, millennia.
Hidden in plain sight is exactly it. We are talking about the dream stele.
Okay, so for you listening, let's set the scene. It's the 15th century BC. We have this young prince, Thutmose IV, and the story goes that he is out hunting on the plateau. He gets totally exhausted, and he falls asleep in the shadow of the Great Sphinx.
And keep in mind, at this point in history, the Sphinx is already ancient.
It's a relic. It's buried almost entirely up to its neck in sand, right?
Exactly. And in this dream, the Sphinx speaks to Thutmose. It makes him this divine deal, basically saying, clear away this sand, restore my body, and I will make you the pharaoh of Egypt.
And he does it. He does the digging, and boom, he becomes Pharaoh Thutmose IV. And to commemorate this, he places this massive carved stone tablet, the dream stele, right between the giant paws of the Sphinx.
And for the longest time, modern historians have looked at that stele and essentially just rolled their eyes.
Yeah, they didn't buy it at all.
Not even a little. They read it as classic textbook royal propaganda. Because in ancient Egypt, if you weren't the absolute, direct, undisputed heir to the throne...
Which he wasn't, right.
Right, he wasn't. So you needed a divine mandate.
Yeah.
The stele was treated as this political PR campaign, a really convenient justification for Thutmose to take a throne he maybe wasn't directly in line for.
So it was viewed purely as a political narrative, not a historical record of the actual landscape.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you actually look closely at the carvings on that piece of royal propaganda, there is a physical detail that changes the entire context.
A huge detail.
The stele clearly, unambiguously depicts two Sphinx figures, not one. Two of them, facing each other, back to back.
Yeah.
And for centuries, we just assumed this was, what, artistic symmetry?
Which is a massive assumption on our part, because to understand why those two sphinxes are there, we really have to look at the mechanics of ancient Egyptian cosmology.
The whole belief system.
Right. Specifically, the concept of Ma'at. M-A-T, Ma'at is the cosmic order, the fundamental balance of the universe.
So everything has to have a pair.
Exactly. Everything in Egyptian theology requires a counterweight. Upper and Lower Egypt, the red crown and the white crown, life and death. Wow, okay.
And more specifically, in their mythology, there is an entity called Aker. Aker is the deification of the horizon, and it's represented by twin lion gods facing opposite directions.
Like the ones on the stele.
Precisely. One guards the sunrise, the other guards the sunset, yesterday and tomorrow. So to have a single solitary sphinx guarding the Giza Plateau actually violates the core operating system of ancient Egyptian theology.
It's like having one half of a pair of bookends.
That is a perfect way to put it, yes.
That makes so much sense. So it's like, imagine you walk past a famous historical billboard every single day for years. You just assume the image on it is an artistic logo.
Just a cool design.
Right, a brand image for the ancient world, symmetrical just to look pretty. But then you learn the actual rules of their language and their religion, and you realize it's not a logo at all.
It's a map.
Yes, it's a literal functional map of the site you're standing on. It's showing you exactly what is supposed to be there. What's fascinating here is how this entirely shifts our perspective on ancient records. We have this terrible habit in modern times of assuming ancient people were purely symbolic or purely mystical in their art.
Like they were just making things up for fun.
Exactly. But if the ancients weren't just being poetic, if they were accurately, literally documenting their physical landscape to align with the myth of Aker, it fundamentally changes how we have to read every single historical artifact we find.
It means the dream stele isn't just a political poster. It's an architectural schematic.
Yes.
Which, I mean, is a huge leap to make. To go from their religion requires a second line to there is a literal giant stone cat buried under millions of tons of sand right now.
It is a big leap.
And as I mentioned earlier, you can't just show up to one of the most protected archaeological sites on Earth with shovels because you reread an old tablet.
Definitely not.
You need a way to look beneath the sand without moving a single grain of it.
Yeah.
And that is where Filippo Biondi's 2025 satellite radar comes in.
Exactly. We put down the chisels and we pick up space-age technology.
I love that.
Biondi's 2025 expedition used advanced ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, mounted on satellite and aerial platforms. They basically scanned the Giza Plateau from above, looking for incredibly subtle ground variations that you could never, ever see with the naked eye.
And to understand where they looked, we have to talk about the geometry of Giza. Because it is not just a random assortment of big triangles dropped in the desert.
I don't know, it's highly engineered.
The layout is incredibly precise. The math is just staggering. Biondi's team essentially treated the plateau like a massive mathematical grid.
It is entirely mathematically deliberate. If you draw a geometric line from the center of the Pyramid of Khafre directly to the existing Great Sphinx, you establish a baseline, like a vector.
Okay, got it.
Now, if you take that exact angle, that exact distance, and you mirror it, reflecting it perfectly so that it originates from the Great Pyramid of Khufu instead.
Wait, let me make sure I'm following. Think of it like folding a piece of paper in half, right?
That's a great visual, yeah.
So if the Khafre Pyramid and the Great Sphinx are drawn on the left side, and the Khufu Pyramid sits right on the crease, when you fold that paper over, the Sphinx's ink is going to transfer to a very specific mirrored point on the right side.
Precisely. And Biondi's team looked at that exact transfer point.
And what did they find at the end of that mirrored line? A massive mound of hardened sand buried just out of sight, roughly 100 to 180 feet high.
And, you know, on the surface, it just looks like the rest of the desert. But in the realm of ancient Egyptian architecture, mathematical symmetry like that is never a natural accident.
Right.
If there is a line from Khafre to Monument A, the mirrored line from Khufu practically demands that there should be Monument B at the end of it.
No, I have to jump in here and push back for a second.
Go for it.
Because, okay, a giant mound of sand in the Egyptian desert. Couldn't that just be a very old sand dune? Like, why are we jumping straight from hardened sand to hidden ancient monuments?
This is a fair question.
Deserts have sand. Wind blows sand into mounds. Why is this special?
That is exactly the right question to ask. To answer it, we have to look at the geological mechanisms at play over thousands of years and how the radar interacts with them.
All right.
When we say hardened sand, we aren't talking about a loose dune. Over millennia, Aeolian sand, which is wind-blown sand, mixes with occasional ancient rainfall and the dust from the surrounding limestone plateau.
So it gets wet and mixes with the rock dust.
Right. And the calcium carbonate from that limestone leaches into the sand, essentially acting as a mineral cement. Over 3,000 years, that dune calcifies. It basically turns into a concrete-like shell.
Ah, okay, so it's not just a pile of beach sand. It's a hardened geological casing.
Precisely. And this is where the physics of the ground-penetrating radar come into play. GPR works by pulsing electromagnetic radio waves into the Earth.
Like a sonar, sort of.
Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
These waves pass right through loose, dry quartz sand very easily. But when those waves hit something with a different dielectric permittivity, meaning a different density, like solid carved limestone blocks, they bounce back. And the radar measures the time delay of that echo, allowing scientists to create a 3D map of the subsurface.
So these radar pings act almost like a geological sonogram.
Mhm.
We aren't just seeing a lump of dense sand. We're seeing the foundational skeleton of whatever is encased inside that calcified shell.
And the skeleton they saw is what changes everything.
Yeah.
Because as the radar penetrated that 180-foot mound, the echoes bouncing back didn't show random, jagged rocks. They revealed distinct structural patterns that perfectly mirror the foundation of the known Great Sphinx.
Wait, really? The exact same foundation?
Yes. The geometric footprint underneath this hardened mound of sand is practically identical to the bedrock footprint of the Sphinx we can already see. And nature does not carve perfect foundational rectangles into bedrock. Engineering does.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because Biondi's sonogram didn't just stop at the shape of a statue footprint.
No, it went much deeper.
Yeah, if it was just a second Sphinx, that would already be the archaeological discovery of the century. But the data shows that a second statue might literally just be the roof of the real discovery.
This is where the scale of the scan expands dramatically. The GPR mapped out a massive network of anomalies deep beneath the surface.
We're talking about deep, vertical shafts dropping straight down into the earth, horizontal tunnels branching out from those shafts at perfect right angles.
Right, highly organized.
And incredibly dense structural formations that are completely consistent with engineered walls and chambers, not just, natural limestone caves or sinkholes. Biondi's team is officially calling it a potential underground megastructure.
Let that sink in for you listening. An underground megastructure beneath Giza.
It's unbelievable.
It really is. In ancient Egyptian engineering, vertical shafts usually serve very specific mechanical purposes.
What?
Well, ventilation for workers or access to deep subterranean levels. And horizontal tunnels imply a network, a facility, a tomb complex, or a temple.
But why build an entire complex underground? Like, what purpose does a subterranean megastructure serve next to the Sphinx?
It goes back to how the Egyptians viewed the Giza Plateau. They didn't just see it as a graveyard. They saw it as a physical, earthly recreation of the Duat.
The Duat, the underworld.
Exactly, the Egyptian underworld. And the Duat wasn't just a spooky, abstract concept. It was a highly specific geographic realm that the soul had to navigate, complete with gates, caverns, and halls.
Oh, so they mapped it out.
Yes. Ancient texts talk about the tomb of Osiris and the halls of Amenti being located deep beneath the sands of Giza. If the pyramids represent the stars of Orion in the sky, a massive underground complex perfectly represents the hidden realm of the Duat below.
That is fascinating. But, and this is a massive but, we need to talk about the reality on the ground today, because not everyone is popping champagne bottles over this radar data.
Far from it.
There is a huge, fierce debate raging right now. And honestly, the skeptics have a very strong case.
They really do. The world of Egyptology is notoriously protective, deeply rigorous, and rightfully skeptical of grand claims.
Right, because we have to look at the other side. You have incredibly prominent, highly influential figures like archaeologist Zahi Hawass, who strongly dismisses these new claims.
And his argument makes a lot of sense from a traditional standpoint.
It's totally logical. He says, look, we have been out here for over 2 centuries. Generations of the greatest archaeologists on Earth have exhaustively excavated the Giza Plateau.
Right.
We have dug everywhere. We have mapped every inch. There is zero physical, tangible evidence of a second Sphinx or a megastructure.
And Hawass is bringing up a vital point about the geology of Giza. The Makatam limestone formation that makes up the plateau is basically Swiss cheese.
What do you mean by that?
It is full of natural fissures, water-carved channels, and minor, unfinished tombs. Ground-penetrating radar is notoriously tricky in a fractured bedrock.
Oh, I see.
So a skeptic looks at Biondi's data and says, You didn't find the tomb of Osiris. You found a natural geological fault line that happens to look like a right angle from space.
Exactly. If there's a massive underground city right next to the most famous pyramids on Earth, how is it possible that generations of archaeologists just walked right over it without falling in? It's a completely fair pushback.
It is, though it is worth noting that Biondi isn't the first person to suggest this.
He's not.
No, over a decade ago, an Egyptologist named Bassem El-Shamma was championing the exact same theory of a second Sphinx.
Oh, right. I remember reading that in the notes.
Yeah, he was looking at the ancient texts, at the dream stele, at the mythology of Acre, and arguing that the linguistic and historical evidence demanded a second monument.
But El Shama was operating purely on text, right?
Exactly. He didn't have the 2025 satellite radar to provide physical coordinates.
So what we have here is the ultimate clash of methodologies. For you listening, think about it like this. It is the boots on the ground, we've dug every inch, my hands are dirty, old school archaeology, going head to head against the view from space, trust the algorithms, look at the dielectric permittivity on my laptop screen, new school remote sensing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is actually a really critical moment in modern science.
How so?
We are watching traditional consensus, which has been built entirely on physical, tangible proof, being forced to grapple with invisible, digitized data. The old guard is essentially saying, if I can't hit it with a trowel, it's not there.
Right.
And the new guard is saying, well, our trowels are just a million miles in the sky and they see structural frequencies your eyes can't.
Which is incredibly frustrating but also thrilling. Because both sides are absolutely right in their own domains. Hawass is right. A radar ping is not a monument. You cannot put a ground-penetrating radar anomaly in a museum. But Biondi is also right. The mathematical symmetry, the mythological precedent of Acre, and the undeniable right angles bouncing back from the subsurface, they can't just be ignored simply because nobody has swung a pickaxe there yet.
Precisely. Data from a satellite is a treasure map. It is a highly educated indicator. But until you verify it, it is just colored pixels on a screen.
So with high-tech radar screaming that there's a megastructure right there, and traditional archaeologists standing on the sand saying it's completely empty, how on earth does this get resolved?
It gets resolved the old-fashioned way. You have to marry the two methodologies. You use the new school map to tell the old school shovels exactly where to dig.
And that is exactly Biondi's game plan right now. His team isn't just publishing a sensational paper and walking away to let the internet argue about it. Yeah. They are currently preparing a formal, highly detailed, scientifically rigorous proposal to the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities for a physical excavation.
Yeah.
And they aren't just going to start blindly bulldozing the plateau. It's a deeply surgical approach.
They have very specific, verifiable objectives. First, they need to take core samples of that massive mound.
To test the sand?
Right. They need to prove, chemically and geologically, that it is in fact calcified wind-blown sand encasing a structure and not just a weirdly shaped outcropping of the natural Makatam bedrock.
In second, they want to target those deep vertical shafts the radar mapped out.
Yeah, that's the smart move.
If they can locate the surface openings and clear out the millennia of debris and blockages, they might not have to dig up the entire 180-foot mound at all. They might just be able to drop cameras and eventually people straight down into the network.
Find the access points into the structure that the builders left behind. And, to his credit, Biondi himself is very intellectually honest about all of this.
He doesn't claim to have it all figured out yet.
No, he is the first to admit that until physical excavation actually happens, until human eyes see a carved wall, a tunnel, or the paw of a second statue, this entire theory remains exactly that, a theory.
So what does this all mean? Let's trace the incredible journey we just took.
It's been quite a ride.
It really has. We started in 1401 BC with a pharaoh claiming he had a dream, carving two sphinxes onto a piece of rock that modern historians confidently dismiss as nothing more than political marketing.
Yep.
We dive into the mythology of Acre and the absolute necessity of cosmic balance in the ancient Egyptian worldview.
The Quen Lions.
Exactly. Then we travel thousands of years to 2025, where satellites bouncing electromagnetic pulses off the Earth find massive geometric engineered structures buried exactly where the math, the paper-folding symmetry of Giza says a second Sphinx should be.
It's mind-blowing when you lay it all out like that.
It points to the incredibly tantalizing possibility that the sands of Giza, a place we arrogantly thought we had completely mapped and figured out, are still guarding secrets that could fundamentally rewrite the history of ancient Egyptian engineering.
It reminds us that history is never actually a closed book. It is a continuous, evolving process of rediscovery.
Love that.
And I want to leave you with this thought to ponder. If the dream still an artifact we so comfortably wrote off as symbolic propaganda turns out to be a literal, highly accurate blueprint for a hidden subterranean megastructure representing the underworld,
Oh, wow.
what other famous mythological texts, ancient poems, or religious carvings around the world have we mistakenly dismissed as mere fairy tales?
That is a chilling thought.
Right. If a myth about twin lion gods is actually a set of architectural coordinates, how many other ancient legends are actually precise maps, just waiting for us to develop the technology to read them correctly?
It makes you want to look at every single ancient carving a little differently, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
The next time you look at a picture of that famous monument, that single, lonely Sphinx sitting in the sand, you won't just see what's there. You'll be looking at the empty space next to it, wondering exactly what is looking back at you from under the sand.
Okay, one question for you. Do the geometric alignments drawn between the Great Pyramid of Khufu, the Pyramid of Khafre, and the existing Sphinx provide real scientific evidence of a mirror second structure? Or could this symmetry simply be coincidental patterns in the landscape? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.